Magandang araw mga kaibigan. Welcome to another episode of Rizal Real Talk, the podcast where we explore the life, works, and continuing impact of Dr. Jose Rizal, our national hero. So today we're diving deep into three major topics from our Rizal course, which is from Module 1 to Module 3. So first is the Rizal Law of 1956 and the debates around it. Second is the tripartite view of Philippine history and Rizal's role in shaping our identity. And lastly, why Rizal is considered our national hero, what made him so, and why his legacy still resonates today. So let's not just remember Rizal as a statue or a name on our pass bill. Let's talk about how his ideas continue to shape our lives and challenge us to become better Filipinos. So for our segment 1, the Rizal Law of 1956, where education meets controversy. So let's begin with Republic Act number 1425, or the Rizal Law, passed in 1956. This law mandates the teaching of the life, works, and writings of Dr. Jose Rizal in all schools. It was authored by Senator Claro M. Recto and strongly supported by Senator Jose P. Laurel. So why was it controversial? O bakit nga ba siya controversial? So the Catholic Church, especially bishops and religious educators, strongly opposed the bill. They claimed that Rizal's novels were anti-Catholic and blasphemous, especially in their depiction of corrupt friars. So the church feared it would weaken the faith of young Filipinos. But several prominent Catholic figures, including Father de la Costa, Horacio de la Costa, a Jesuit priest and historian, participated in the opposition. However, Father de la Costa took a more academic approach, suggesting Rizal must be studied with context, not banned. Eventually, a compromise was made, so students could read expurgated versions or edited versions of the novels upon request, although later on most schools, they adopted the full text. So, yung Module 1 symbolizes the academic freedom, a reminder that we should know our history to better shape our future. So, this law was groundbreaking because it challenged the church influence on education and empowered today the new generation to think critically about national identity, colonialism, and social justice, which are the issues Rizal himself fought for. So for our second segment, which is named Rewriting Our Story, the tripartite view of history. So now let's talk about how history is taught and how Rizal fits in. Traditionally, our history was taught using a bipartite view, which is pre-colonial era before Spanish arrival, and the Spanish colonial era from 1521 until 1898. But this limited view ignores what came after colonization, our ongoing struggles with identity, development, and even modern-day corruption. Historians like Zu Salazar and others propose the tripartite view of Philippine history, which divides it into three parts. So first part is the pre-colonial period, which contains rich cultures, thriving trade, and strong native identity. Second is the colonial period, wherein Spanish and American rule marked by oppression and resistance. And lastly, post-colonial period, where the time after independence, where we still deal with neo-colonial influences and internal challenges. So in this tripartite framework, Rizal plays a key role in the transition from colonial to post-colonial consciousness. His writings were not just critics of colonial rule, they helped awaken national identity. So the propaganda movement led by Rizal, Marcelo H. del Pilar, Graciano Lopez, and others aimed to secure equal rights for Filipinos as Spanish citizens and promote freedom of speech, assembly, and especially education. This also exposed the abuses by friars and corrupt colonial officials. So Rizal, as a leading figure in this propaganda movement, he used words and education not weapons to expose injustice and call for reform, setting ideological foundation for the Philippine Revolution. Rizal's writings, especially his novels and essays like La Indolencia de los Filipinos, educated Filipinos about their rights and identity. And though Rizal wasn't as revolutionary like Bonifacio, he inspired the revolution of ideas that sparked national awakening. So, talking about Rizal's legacy, he challenged how Filipinos saw themselves, not as passive, colonized people, but a nation worth fighting for. And so, for our third and last segment, why is Rizal our national hero? Is he more than a symbol? So now, the million peso question, why is Dr. Jose Rizal considered our national hero? So some say it's because the Americans chose him, but if you really study his life, you'll see he earned it through his ideas, sacrifices, and unwavering love for the Filipino people. So let's break down some of his key qualities and contributions in our country. So first, his intellectual brilliance. So he mastered over 20 languages, was a doctor, writer, artist, and scientist at the same time. But he didn't use his knowledge just for personal gain. He used it to educate and inspire others, us Filipinos. Second, courage without violence. So Rizal believed in change through education, civic virtue, and peaceful reform. Even when threatened with death, he did not call for revenge but for unity. Third is self-sacrifice. So even though Rizal knew that his novels like El Filibusterismo and No Limitang Hurry would endanger his life, he published them anyway. So he returned to the Philippines knowing that he might be killed, and he was. But he stood by his principles still to the very end. Fourth, vision of a nation. So Rizal dreamed of a Filipino identity that was independent, just, and humane. So his final poem, which is the Mi Ultimo Adios, wasn't a cry of anger, it was a love letter to the Philippines. So for the module 3 that I'm tackling about today is Rizal showed us that being a hero isn't just about power, it's about principles. So if we connect the modules from Module 1 to Module 3, Module 1 taught us why Rizal's ideas matter in education and in our identity, which is our national identity. Module 2 showed how Rizal's and the propagandists' ideas defined our understanding of history and helped shape our sense of nationhood. And lastly, for the Module 3, humanized Rizal, not just a hero or figure in our books, but as a person who lived, struggled, and died for the Filipino people, for us. And so for our final segment, Rizal's relevance today. So more than 100 years later, Rizal's voice still echoes. Whenever we fight for education reforms, stand against injustice, or question abuse of power, we continue Rizal's legacy. Every time we ask critical questions, demand transparency, or speak up for the oppressed, we honor the heroism Rizal motto. They challenge us even now with one question. And it is, what are you doing for your country? Or what will you do for your country? Because today, being a hero doesn't mean facing a firing squad. It means standing up for the truth in small ways, online, in our classroom, and even in our communities. So let's not just memorize Rizal's names, or because it's just our national hero, or it's because he's standing in Luneta Park. It's because we live his message. So thanks for joining me in this episode of Rizal Real Talk. I hope today's discussion helped you see Rizal not just as a national hero, but as a continuing inspiration in our lives. The best way to honor Rizal is to keep thinking, questioning, and acting good for the nation. Until next time, mabuhay ang kabataang Pilipino at mabuhay si Dr. Jose Rizal.